phone screen's going to go off. Thank you. Why do you do this to me? Okay, we got a problem here. I'm just hearing myself. I need to make sure I don't. Oh, was that you? Okay. All right. Good evening. Welcome to Zion's Banner. We are broadcasting from Hillside Southern Baptist Church, which may very well become our new home for broadcasting. We're excited. A little bit more of a partnership has started here, and so we're getting started. Now, I'm excited about tonight's message. It's going to be a little different than usual. We're going to discuss a topic that relates to the Trinity and to Islamic polemics. And we've got a few other things going, and I've got some resources for you. But I am going to go ahead and let you know where we're at. I'm going to let you know something special for those folks who are on. Welcome to Zion's Banner. We are broadcasting from Hillside Southern Baptist Church, which may very well become our new home for broadcasting. We're excited. I'm getting a little bit more of a partnership has started here, and so we're getting started. Now I'm excited about tonight's message. It's going to be a little different than usual. We're going to discuss a topic that relates to. I'm getting feedback. I'm hearing myself.
Yeah, but that's all words that you've said.
And, okay.
Are you on Facebook?
And I've got some resources for you.
Oh no, I'm not.
Okay.
But I am going to go ahead and let you know where we're at.
Could you?
I'm going to let you know
turn you on
special.
Facebook.
Okay. My wife's helping with Facebook right now. I'm sorry about the the bleed over. There's a little bit of getting used to the acoustics here. But we've got some special things. I've got a special clip. If you're on Facebook, getting a little bit of
just keep going.
I need people on Facebook to kind of hear this stuff.
I know. Well, I don't know how to get your.
I'm getting feedback. I'm hearing myself. Hold on a sec here. We're just going to just a sec here. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, I'm going live on Facebook. I want the people who are on Facebook to hear this because I've got something special going on. So anyway, if you're on Facebook, what I've done is I posted the PowerPoint with the actual sound clips of what we're going to be using. And so you can actually get a hold of that. Thank you for hanging in there, Roxby. I think you're still in there. Just took me a little while to kind of get used to our new facilities here and kind of get geared up. Things are a little different here. So, Facebook folks, you can go to the link that was in the post and see the Facebook and see the video clips that are part of the Facebook. We're going to have some animated guests, 2 Irish peasants, and so we're working on that there too. Now, you're probably thinking, how do I get to your Facebook page? Well, Roxby has been good when I've been on a vocab show with posting the URL, but I'm going to stick a little bit of getting started here so that you can actually see it. I'm sorry about that. I went the wrong place. There we go. You should see the promo in just a second. You see the website, and I'm hearing myself, so it's a little disconcerting. But I'm going to turn my speakers down, and I hope that what that does is start to keep me from hearing so much of myself that it's unbearable. Because it's like this echo chamber, and it makes me feel like I'm in Mammoth Cave, and so I wanted to get rid of that. There's the little promo. That's up there for you. That just gives you an idea where we're going to go. I'm going to go ahead and switch us over and get going. And so let's get to tonight's lesson, and you should be able to see that in a moment or two. That's coming on. There it is. It'll take a second in delay to go ahead and do that, but you should see that any second coming up. There is a little more delay with the web here because of the upload speed. So hang in there. There's going to be a delay. I'm tuning down the echo. Thank you, Roxby, for letting me know. You can let me know whether you still hear the echo or not. That should be pretty much gone. I've muted the speakers. Can you still hear me, dear? Okay. It's because the speakers are on same circuit. Okay, I got it. That should get rid of the echo. Let me know if you still hear it, Roxby. I always appreciate having folks on who help me see what other people are seeing. So you should be transitioned in a sec here to the PowerPoint. There we go. And the PowerPoint should come up any minute now. Okay, it's real low. I'm going to go to a complete mute. You should hear nothing in just a second or two when it catches up with itself. Thanks again. We're going to go to the PowerPoint here. This is going to be an exciting PowerPoint, and I really like the clip I was able to add in. because it's sort of like, as I said, animated guess. You know, how many Jewish guys talking about a concept of Islam and the Trinity get to have 8th century Irish folks on? And you'll find out more about that, but it was so fun to go ahead and include that. Excellent. We've got PowerPointage. Now the PowerPoint should go ahead and change normally. I just need to see myself. Windows needs to invent a way by which you can see more windows at once. There we go. Okay, we are going to spend a little time on Jewish thought. One, because I love segues. In fact, I've been called the master of segues. And you're going to see that there's some connection here between Islamic thought and Jewish thought. Go figure. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as kind of a segue. So, you know, I realize that there is this delay, but it doesn't seem to be too bad. You may be a slide or two, and I'm trying to give time for the internet universe to come into play here. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're talking about, there we go. I know the folks in one place can at least see that. Slide's going to be changing. We're going to be discussing someone named Moses Maimonides. Now, he becomes the one who codifies rabbinical Judaism during the Middle Ages. And so just so that you sort of know where he kind of plays in, there's Jewish thought that's different than his thought. But what's really interesting about him is he was not in the West. He was actually somebody who ended up being the physician in the Islamic court for the Sultan. And you can kind of see that there in that PowerPoint. He was the private physician to Saladin's vizier. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to pronounce the Arabic because I don't like when people mispronounce Hebrew words, and I'm not going to try to always pronounce the Arabic. What you do need to know is Saladin was involved with the Crusades and was quite a character and was quite a leader in Islam, and so he was the court physician. And I cited some Jewish history, and so he's the one who codifies Jewish thought during the Middle Ages. Now, there was some of this thinking before, and I'm just getting back there, but he's the one who writes the only statement of doctrine that really kind of gains traction and acceptance in Judaism. There were attempts before that. And they were different, and they were interesting in a sense because they weren't bad. Sajid Gion did it. His formulation isn't bad at all. In fact, his formulation is probably something that would be maybe less problematic for Christians. Now, what you need to understand is that his early articles deal with the Trinity. And so I'm just kind of setting the stage here because what I want you to see is some of the language of Maimonides, who was exposed to Islamic thought, is going to be very similar to Tawhid, which we're going to talk about. And actually, I know somebody who wrote their dissertation related to their doctorate on the influence of Islam on Judaism. And I found that really interesting as I was looking at his language and some of the language in Islam. Now, his thinking is not the only Jewish thinking, which is something that I'm pointing out in my dissertation. And it is true that there were others that thought differently. He's also not so original that his formulation had nobody ever thinking like he did before. He was known for the systematizing, and he was sort of the great systematizer. And so he molds Jewish thought, and all Jewish thought, rabbinical Jewish thought today is post-Maimonidean. In other words, it's influenced by Maimonides, which is something else I point out in my dissertation. Now, let's look at this a little bit here. These 13 articles all begin with "I'm firmly believe" or "I believe with perfect faith," might be a better translation, that the Creator, blessed be He, is both Creator and ruler of all created being, and that He alone hath made, doth make, and ever will make all works of nature. Now, to the Jewish person, these two articles are going to end up being some of the polemics and some of the reasons that they do not accept the Trinity. I firmly believe, or I believe with perfect faith, that the Creator, blessed be He, is one, and no unity like His in any form, that He alone is our God, who was and is and ever will be. Now, the way this article is understood is to preclude any sort of compound unity. So when Maimonides does this, he deliberately uses the word for one and only one, yechid, and so it's really anti-Trinitarian. We believe in the unity of God, but his formulation of the unity of God is not what everybody in Jewish thought used to think, and it precludes, or it excludes is a better word. It shouldn't say precludes. It excludes any allowance for the Trinity. Okay? In Judaism, there are at least two ways that there's an allowance for a mystery to God's oneness. We've talked about this, the Shekinah and Messiah himself. And there's plenty of rabbinical stuff that indicates that this is not the only accepted thought. Now, I am going to go to Islam. We're going to talk about the way Islam deals with the oneness of God. And that's why I'm really excited about this. I kind of wish more people were tuning in, because this is a real issue with Islam. And we're going to see the Islamic objections to the oneness of God. And then we're going to look at the way they formulate what's called tawhid, which really is connected to the word echad and deals with the oneness of God. So as I'm looking at that, you can see that there are some ways that a mystery to God's oneness is implied in the Old Testament. We're not going to take time with that. We've done that before. But we're going to be looking at the Islamic objections to the Trinity in view of what's called tawhid, which actually refers back to the word echad. So I'm going to pull this up, and I'm clicking through this. There we go. Now, I want to start with the fact that since we're going to be comparing the scriptures and what they say about God's oneness with tawhid, I want to establish that there's already a problem, because the Kran does affirm the scriptures. I got a hold of another apologetics resource, which you're going to end up getting to see. And my dear friend George knows Sam Shamoun. But he wrote in the Journal of Biblical Apologetics, Volume 7, which was produced in 2003. In page 29, he cites Surah 571. Say, O people of the book, that you are not founded on anything until you perform the Torah and the Gospels, and what was revealed to you from your Lord. Now, this is an affirmation that the people of the book have the Torah and the Gospels. And so Islam talks about the Torah, more likely in Arabic, Torah, and the Injil, or the Gospels. Now, there's a discussion about whether the Injil are our Gospels, because they believe that these things were corrupted. But the teachings and life of Jesus, the Injil, actually comes from Evangel, most likely, and that would make perfect sense. And those are the Gospels. The question is, are our Gospels the Gospels? And we're not going to touch that. We can touch that another time. The important thing is we're comparing what they call tawhid with the scriptures, and then we're going to compare what the Quran says about God's oneness in some places where it doesn't even agree with the principles around what's called tawhid. So let's deal with the basis of our rebuttal. First of all, we're going to point out that the Quran doesn't agree, but what's our basis biblically for rebuttal? Well, while the Bible affirms that God is one, it also allows the conditions, I'm reading off my slide. You'll be reading off my slide in a minute. The Bible, while affirming that God is one, also allows that the conditions of tawhid are allowed to be extended to more than one person. Now, I know that sounds complicated, but here's the thing. The thing that tawhid says can only apply to God as one person can be applied to more than one person according to the Bible. That's our first premise, that the Bible allows the conditions that tawhid says can only be applied to one person, to more than one person, even though the Bible affirms one God. In other words, the conditions associated with Tachid, which Tachid only allows to be applied to God the Father, can be applied beyond God the Father. The Quranic understanding of Tawhid is restricted to only one person and one God, but the Bible doesn't make that doesn't restrict those conditions to one person. Therefore, the understanding of Tawhid, as Islam understands the unity of God, or what they call Tawhid, is unbiblical. Do you see where I'm going with this? Now, I know it's a little complicated in that first premise, but the reality is the Bible takes the conditions that Tawhid applies to one person, or the conditions of Tawhid, and applies it to more than one person. Therefore, the Islamic concept of God's oneness, which they call Tawhid, is not biblical. So their objection to the Trinity is illegitimate because their understanding of God's oneness is unbiblical, because the conditions that they would apply to only one person are applied to more than one person by the Bible. Then we're going to go ahead and look at what the Quran says, where the conditions of Tawhid are applied to persons that aren't necessarily God, and see that the Quran's actually inconsistent with itself. Okay, so let's look. What are they talking about? What's a Muslim talking about when he refers to God's unity? And that's the slide that I'm putting up next. They had to have a way of dealing with what does this all mean? And so they came up with a way of understanding what they mean by the oneness of God. Not what we mean, okay? Now, I've got a bunch of names up there, okay? But this was a way of them breaking down in their own writings related to what God being one means. Now, I'm quoting them, so I'm using the term Allah. I've done a thing, in fact, I did it for George Saig and Ministry to Muslims, on whether Allah and God are the same. The answer to that is, if Allah doesn't have the same characteristics as the God of the Bible, they're not the same deity. That's the way it is. But I put Allah in here because I'm quoting their stuff. And when I quote someone else's stuff, I use their terminology, okay? The oneness of, when we start, the oneness of the Lordship of Allah, and then you see the individual who this sort of connected with. To believe that there is only one Lord in all the universe, who is the creator, organizer, planner, sustainer, giver of security, etc. The etc. is probably not in the Arabic, right? And that is Allah. So, does the Bible indicate that only one person has those things, or does the Bible indicate that more than one person, even though there's one God, has those things? Okay, then you have condition 2, the oneness of worship. So if God's one, how does that affect worship? Well, it's to believe that none has the right to be worshipped. Now, what does worship mean? Well, further defined by Dr. Muhammad up there, and the other people being cited, they would say that would include praying, invoking, asking for help from the unseen, swearing, offering sacrifice, giving charity, fasting, pilgrimage, and all of those things can only refer to Allah as one God and one person. You see the difference there? There's no Allah the Father, Allah the Son. Okay, one God, Allah there, also means one person. So those are the conditions. Does the Bible apply those first two conditions only to one person, even though it affirms one God? Now the third has to do with the oneness of the names and qualities. Now this is attributes, okay? We must not name or qualify Allah with what he or his messenger has named or qualified him. None other can be named or qualified with the names and qualifications of Allah. Boom. Okay? That's all. You can't give the attributes of Allah to another. You can't give the names of Allah to another, and there are 99 names associated with Allah. You can't give those to another. Does the Bible give or state attributes of God being assigned or shared with another? Are any of the names of God used for more than just one person? even though the Bible affirms one God. See, that would be a violation of Tawhid the way Islam understands it, Tawhid referring to divine unity, but those conditions of Tawhid, if they're applied to more than one person, mean that you have one God and one person, and their understanding of Tawhid, or divine unity, as they call it, I'm using their term, would be wrong. Okay? Now, I'm going to go through an argument that Christians use for the plurality of God, and I just want to state, if you don't qualify this argument, you're doing it wrong. Okay, I'm gonna do that because too many Christians do this, and they don't qualify that argument. So hang out there with me, because I really want you to get this, because everyone knee-jerks to this argument, and I really wish that they'd learn to nuance it, to qualify it, to give it correctly, okay? Now, we are firmly monotheistic. The difference is in the nature of our monotheism. Islam is formulating the unity of God, or Tawhid, in an unbiblical and wrong way. Okay? So there's one creator God who is the sustainer of all things. We agree with that. Now, everyone goes to Elohim. Let us make God, man in our image. See, Elohim's plural. Please, you got to state part B of the argument, or don't use the argument, because you're going to get blasted. I'm going to let you know, okay? The fact that Elohim is plural is not sufficient alone to make the case of plurality. You're going to get blasted by a Brooklyn rabbi, and you're going to get blasted by a Muslim if you're doing mosque stuff, okay? And that has to do with the nature of Elohim. It's not usually used in the singular form. It just isn't grammatically used in the singular form. It might hint at plurality, but you need part 2 of the argument, okay? And that's the grammatical construction of how Elohim is being used. So let's go to a place where Elohim is being used, and let's take a look at this. Now, I get to offhand read Hebrew for you, okay? Vayomer Elohim na'atzeh Adam b'tseleh. I'm making sure I got my vowel points right. B'tsalmenu kidumatenu